Hello and welcome to the Rogers Brief for January 20th, 2023. I'm Adam Rogers. Thank you for watching and thank you for listening. In this program, I bring you some analysis and reviews of stories that are in the news and have either a legal angle as their main feature or else some sort of legal angle that I think might be underappreciated. I'm based in Nova Scotia, so a lot of the time those are Nova Scotia cases, but cover whatever catches my interest from across the country and sometimes internationally. And actually, the first story I'm going to talk about today is a big international story, and that's the announcement from the district attorney in Nevada that they're going to be arresting Alec Baldwin for involuntary manslaughter. And this case comes back from October of 2021. He was filming a movie there called Rust. I don't know what the status of that movie is, if it's ever going to be finished, but there was a shooting, an accidental shooting. We all, interpret it to be an accidental shooting at the time. Cinematographer Halyna Hutchins was shot, and she was shot by Alec Baldwin, who was holding a gun that was to be used in the next scene. And of course, everybody thought that it was going to be a prop gun with no ammunition, but it turned out that it did have live ammunition in the gun, and so Miss Hutchins was killed. Actually, director Joel Souza was also injured at that time. So that was that, and Alec Baldwin did some interviews. This was soon thereafter, and seemed very shaken up about the whole thing. But nobody really seemed to contemplate at the time that there would be criminal charges arising. There was one incident, and there was an interview Alec Baldwin did where he said that he didn't pull the trigger, which seemed curious. That anyway, even though it's a prop gun, there's been FBI analysis since then to say that the gun functioned properly. In other words, somebody, that is Alec Baldwin, must have pulled the trigger. Any event, he's been charged. So involuntary manslaughter. So this is it's different. It's down in the States. This is out of Santa Fe, New Mexico. And in the States, and it's not federal criminal law the way we have it here in Canada. It's by each state, but they're more or less the same. But it's phrased a little differently. The equivalent charge in Canada would be criminal negligence causing death, section 220 of the criminal code up here. And that is without, so you're killing a human without the intent to do so, either one, in the commission of an unlawful act, or of a lawful act, something you're allowed to do, but which probably might produce such a consequence. Anyway, it's kind of a funny way of phrasing it down there. So if you're doing something that's already unlawful and you kill somebody, well, that's involuntary manslaughter. Or if you're doing something you're allowed to do, but it probably might produce such a consequence. So in other words, it was risky and you took the risk and you did it. Well, here, I don't know. I've heard, seen the articles where there's allegations that the rules on ammo and all this stuff, things were kind of loose on the set, but an actor surely is not expected to check the prop weapons or think anything but it's a prop weapon and it has not real live ammunition. I expect this wouldn't have happened in Canada. This charge would not have been laid. In the U.S., criminal prosecutions are a little more political. I saw the prosecutor there, the district attorney, this Mary Carmack Altweiss, said, "On my watch, no one is above the law and everyone deserves justice." So I'd say this is a situation where the district attorney is trying to get her 15 minutes of fame and is using this as an excuse. I mean, no matter how, there may have been some safety rule violations of other things, but a live firearm, I think an actor is entitled to assume that that's a prop and not have to check everything. So anyway, that was big news. That was Alec Baldwin. Like I say, up in Canada here, I don't think we'd be seeing this charge laid in the first place. But in any event, Alec Baldwin should have a good defense, and I think he'll be fine. It's a risk, though. The minimum sentence, if he's found guilty of this, is 1 year in jail. There's no, there is a minimum sentence there. The maximum is 4 years, but any time in jail for Alec Baldwin is certainly going to be dramatic and significant. So I don't see that happening, but remains to be seen. Things are a little less predictable down in the States for those kinds of things. Okay, so other things I want to talk about. One is a piece of legislation out of the federal government, and then I'm going to talk about some cases out of Nova Scotia. There was an appeal that was actually live streamed yesterday on Thursday afternoon. The live stream didn't really work that well, but it was a major case, this Colin Tweedy appeal. And then there was a few other stories I'll just touch on. There was an accidental 911 call that led to a weapons charge. So I'll just chat about that. CERT, the Serious Incident Response Team in Nova Scotia that examines officer situations where officers have seriously injured or killed anybody. An officer shot a man who was wielding an axe. And so there's a CERT report on that. Had a look at that. And then finally, the William Sanderson case. This was the individual who was going into med school. He was ready to start med school. This was in August of 2015, and 2017. And he was found guilty, was successful on appeal, and now is back for a retrial. So that's just by virtue, well, there's not that many murder trials in Nova Scotia at any time anyway, but by virtue of him being a future medical student or a pending medical student, that took on some prominence, and it's back in trial again. So let's start with the Underused Housing Act. All right, this is a piece of federal legislation, just took effect January 1st of this year. And what it is a tax. It's a new tax on foreign owners' unoccupied or underutilized residential real estate. Took a lot of people by surprise. That's why I'm bringing it up. Took a lot of Nova Scotia real estate lawyers by surprise. I see a few, like McGinnis Cooper had an article out on this just a couple of days ago, and others have been looking at it, but it's caught some people by surprise. It's a 1% tax on any property that is owned by somebody who's a non-resident or a non-Canadian, non-citizen. And so each year it's an obligation to file taxes, file the tax and make a declaration on this and pay 1% of the value of the property. So caught a lot of people by surprise. I know the lawyers, they're all going to have to advise their clients now about having that, doing that declaration and filing those taxes. Cottages are excluded. So the intent seems to be, it's directed at larger cities, larger markets to discourage foreign ownership. And so if you take that, or discourage that, reduce that part of the market, then perhaps either the supply will open up or at least prices will slow down. The inflation of prices may slow down if that element of the market, sort of foreign speculation purchasers, are excluded from the market. I guess so. That may be good for places like Toronto and Vancouver, more urban centers, but rural municipalities, I know that rely, in this area at least, that rely on some foreign ownership for tax base, may not be quite so happy. One of the reasons why, so the reason I bring this up, not only the issue of catching people by surprise with the new federal tax, but I don't think this, I'm surprised that this hasn't caught more controversy as a constitutional issue, because Section 92 sub 13 of the Constitution of the country says that property and civil rights are provincial matters. All right, so anything to do with land tax, these are all, set, the rates are set by the province and by municipal governments. But here is the federal government coming in and taxing land. Now, when foreign owners sell land, there's a 25% holdback on that sale, and there's a filing to do with capital gains tax. So that's to do with land, and that's legitimate, but that's an income tax. That's done as an income tax, not as a land tax, which this is much more purely. The pith and substance of this seems to be property and civil rights. It'll be interesting to see who, if anyone, I suspect somebody will, at least some group perhaps, will or maybe an individual province will take this matter to court, see if it's indeed constitutional, and we'll see if that develops. But that was something that came to my attention this week. Hasn't really been in the news very much, even though the tax came into effect a few weeks ago. But people aren't declaring until April for the last year's taxes, so maybe it isn't top of mind for owners just yet. Okay, some of the other cases out of Nova Scotia. There was an appeal heard yesterday by the Court of Appeal, and they did something that's fairly rare, which is they gave a decision immediately that they were allowing the appeal. And this is the appeal of Colin Tweedy. Colin Tweedy was the accused individual. I think he was 27 at the time, who had ran over and killed a 10-year-old girl, Talia Forrest, in Cape Breton and near the Sydney area. She was out riding a bike. It was getting late in the evening, and anyway, she was struck and killed. The trial was heard, and back in last year, March of last year, Justice Mona Lynch released a decision finding Mr. Tweedy not guilty. Some of the issues that were up then were that Mr. Tweedy, he had some alcohol in him. He had had a couple of drinks before. So Mr. Tweedy didn't stop. There was no brake marks. He didn't stop. He drove home, which was only a few kilometers away, and then he and his girlfriend started walking back towards the scene. He claims in his statement to police that he thought he hit a deer, just wanted to get the vehicle home, which had sustained some damage, and so he did that, never stopped, and went back. I think some submission on appeal, and probably at trial too, is that that's, not necessarily a believable story. That's sort of the oldest story in the book when it comes, people think, oh, I hit a deer. Well, but he claims that his father had hit a deer there not too long before, and he himself had seen deer in that area, and that certainly does happen. It was out late, fairly late in the night. I think it was 9 something when it happened. So it was getting dark too, and the road wasn't that great. So there was, anyway, so all these questions about, how reasonable it was for him to be driving. He was tested for alcohol that night. It was hours later, and he tested 60 over 100 at about 1:50 in the morning. So this was 4 hours after. And he tested at 60. That was extrapolated back that it might have been over the limit, but unless he had had a beer just before he drove. Well, it turns out he did have a beer just before he drove. He was at a friend's place playing some darts. That was confirmed by him and the other friend's girlfriend. So there was some stuff that sort of lined up, and it didn't appear that he was speeding either. It was an 80 zone. The reconstructionist had him going at 70 something at the time. So it was dark. He was driving under the limit. Bad road. No brake marks. Said he hit a deer. Anyway, it was so he was found not guilty by Justice Lynch back in March. Appealed, and the Crown said. Now, this was in the news articles because the live stream wasn't working very well yesterday, and it's not back up on the court's website just yet. I wouldn't mind watching this to hear what the arguments were, because in the newspaper articles that covered the appeal, they said that the judge didn't consider willful blindness of the accused, that he somehow, all right, just didn't go back to check because he didn't want to know. Not sure if that would have made, I'm not sure how this argument would be constructed, so I'll be very interested to see the Court of Appeal decision when it comes out. They, of course, didn't have written reasons ready. Now, since it was the Crown that did this appeal, I suspect they will go to a retrial, so that's what was ordered, a retrial. I don't really see how they're going to clean things up. There was a friend that was out with Talia Forrest, biking with her, whose evidence had some problems with it, had the car details wrong, the color of the vehicle wrong in her original statement, claimed that the driver had opened a door to try to hit her. There was some other issues with her statement, so those aren't going to be fixed. The expert evidence that extrapolated the alcohol level back to the time of the accident, uh, that's not going to change. So I don't see exactly what is going to happen under a different justice. What the Crown expects they're going to be able to change. It might be just putting people through a difficult trial, heartache all over again to no effect. So I'm not sure if I agree with this decision by the Crown to go back after the appeal, but we'll see when the decision comes out, the written decision of the Court of Appeal itself, to see if there's anything else that stands out as a mistake by the judge in her original decision. All right, so a few other cases. There was three other cases I wanted to talk about. One is this, anyway, kind of a funny in a way story, but not funny when you see what was seized. Accidental 911 call leads to weapons charges in Cole Harbour. All right. Handguns, swords, grenades were seized, laying out in the open. Didn't release the name of the person, but that'll come out, I'm sure, soon enough. Question, okay, so the issue is accidental 911 call. Why didn't the guy just say, hey, when the police show up, that was an accident, I didn't mean to call you, you can't come in? Well, the police under those circumstances are entitled, and in fact I would almost argue obligated, not to believe such a story. I mean, they have the 911 call. It could be, maybe it was a victim inside that was trying to call 911, and the assaulter is at the door saying, "Oh no, it's okay." Well, so of course the officers have to go in, and these weapons were in plain sight in the main room apparently. So, once you get in and you see, okay, you get a better picture of the situation and see that there's no danger. Maybe you don't have to search every nook and cranny, but to go in and at least search the main areas and make sure that what is being portrayed as an accident is indeed that. So be careful about calling 911. Next one, CERT, Serious Incident Response Team. This was a very unusual situation. So the headline from the media story was that an officer was shot an axe-wielding man in the leg. Well, shot an axe-wielding man. Turns out he shot him in the leg. So no names used in the CERT report, but this happened last year sometime. One of the last reports from interim CERT Director John Scott, by the way, will soon be getting Alonzo Wright on the job, and we'll be having the opportunity to read Mr. Wright's reports in the near future. So in this case, there was three living together, a mother with her son and a daughter. His daughter had special needs. That wasn't described in any other detail, but the son was apparently becoming more paranoid and unpredictable, threatened the mother with an axe, and the mother fled, took the son's car, drove to the police station, called 911 from there on the outdoor phone. Officers got to the house within half an hour or so. There was three of them. Two arrived first, went to the front of the house, tried to call him out. The guy, told them off. He wasn't coming out. And the third one showed up, went around to the back, and had his taser in one hand and gun in the other, going in to try to help the daughter out because the mother was worried about the daughter's safety. And called for the guy to come out with his hands up. He came out with his axe in the air, hands up I guess, but with an axe. So he was shot first with the taser. The officer shot him with the taser. That didn't stop him. The officer was backing out of the house, and the guy follows with the axe. The officer then gave him instructions, and he wasn't following, kept coming at him, and so shot him in the leg. Anyway, the CERT report found that this was completely proper behavior. Interesting note from it that the officer was wearing a body camera, and CERT called this extremely beneficial. So we'll be probably hearing more discussion about that. Case like this, you never know how stories may turn and all that stuff, but a body camera made it all very clear to the CERT director, evidently, so that's something we may be seeing more of. All right, final story today. I'm going to talk about the William Sanderson case. Just briefly, this is not is not finished yet. It's into his second week. It's not looking good for William Sanderson. He had so this was to do with another student, and they were arranging a drug deal for about 20 pounds of marijuana. Well, that marijuana was found in his brother's apartment. So that's a connection, obviously. Taylor Samson had brought the marijuana. We saw this on video, or the jury saw it on video. Him bringing this black bag with 20 pounds, well, presumably with 20 pounds, we think. And now we see this marijuana found in his brother's apartment. There was also a bullet found in William Sanderson's apartment. Remember that the neighbors heard a shot, and allegation is that Taylor Samson was shot in the apartment and then brought out in some plastic bags thereafter. They've done a search and they claim to have found some things at this family farm property in Truro. I don't have a lot of detail on that yet, but we'll see if there's more of a connection there. The suggestion, I think, was that he took Samson's body to that farm and tried to dispose of it there in some way. The one thing I think Sanderson has going for him, there was the cameras around the apartment building, but they were shut off. So Samson arrived at 10:30 p.m. and between 11:30 p.m. and 1 p.m. the cameras aren't functioning. So we see Samson going in, and the jury has seen him go in, and he never leaves. Well, maybe he left at this time. So that was an open question for, and maybe the only real hope of planting some seeds of doubt in the jury's mind for William Sanderson and his lawyer. So we'll see how that one goes, but like I say, not looking good for William Sanderson in this retrial. The first trial, you may recall, I mentioned this in a previous submission, it wasn't an evidentiary issue so much, it was a trial fairness problem that the Court of Appeal struck on. It was Taylor Samson had hired, William Sanderson had hired a private investigator to help him out. The private investigator ended up turning information over to the police that was very harmful to Sanderson. So the Court of Appeal found that to be an issue of unfairness and overturned the appeal. So anyway, that's those are some of the thoughts from this week. And I'm going to, by the way, I'm going to be doing a shorter version of this too. Be interested to hear people's comments on which one they prefer of the two, if either. And I'm going to try to do one, a Rogers brief in brief, one of about 3 minutes or so, covering the same kind of stuff. So anyway, look forward to your feedback. If you like these videos, please click on the like button, and don't forget to share it with a friend and recommend it to others, and that's how we grow this project. So thanks again for watching, thanks for listening, and we'll see you next time.